Welcome to Monday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff live here on Giants.com, the mobile app, as well as YouTube. He's Paul Dottino. I'm Lance Medow with you for the next 60 minutes. It is presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. Multiple ways you can interact with us here on the program. You give us a ring, 201-939-4513. You can also interact with the two of us on Twitter. He's at GiantsWFAN. I'm at Lance Medow, one word, last name, Medow. We are broadcasting from the Giants podcast studio. It is presented by Hackensack Meridian Health. Keep getting better. So a lot to tackle over the course of this program. We'll recap a little bit from the win over Philadelphia on Thursday Night Football. Look ahead to the Denver Broncos game. Also count up how many times Paul actually watched the Thursday night game over the course of this extended weekend. So stay tuned for that. We'll have a tally in the upper right or left corner depending on what Pearson and the production team come up with. Yeah. Oh, I can imagine. And I can only once again imagine how many times you did review, especially that fourth quarter, based on what the Giants did.
The good news is now we have digital replays. You know, back in the day, I had to pop in
the VHS tape?
The VHS tape, and yes. I would go back and rewind. And
you'd wear down the film, too.
It was really, It was a lot of burden on the damn machine. I mean, I taxed the damn VCR machine
thankfully,
really
there's no
heavily.
Taxing anymore. Yeah.
I mean, you know, to watch the game 3 times, to go back and look at some plays 6 times, rewind, fast forward, stop, slow motion, step. It was rough. I could do it a lot quicker now that it's all digital.
I can only imagine. Sure. Yeah. Well,
see, technology isn't always bad. Sometimes it's actually good.
Well, maybe this is a breakthrough in terms of Paul Dottino actually embracing and commending the future as opposed to living in the past. We'll live in the past a little bit in terms of reviewing Thursday night. And let's start there, Paul, because, you know, there's a few takeaways. We weren't on Friday's show, so this is the first time that we're on discussing the ins and outs of this game. And there are 2 things that stood out to me, at least from a big picture perspective. Number one, Philadelphia was excellent coming into the game in protecting the football. And the Giants turned the tables on them. That was significant, especially down the stretch. Jalen Hurts had not thrown an interception since Week 10 in the regular season of last year. So that just goes to show you how rare of occurrence what Cordell Flott did. But then...
Great play, by the way.
Heads-up play, and an excellent play, because also his return, even though he didn't score, shortened the field immensely for the offense. And the most important aspect, as you hear me always talk about, takeaways are great, it's all about what you do with them. The offense then punched it in. And that was, keep in mind, we're talking about it is a 27-17 game with just over 11 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. Okay, just think about that. The Eagles, they're at the Giants' 15-yard line, Paul. Okay, they're knocking on the door. If they score a touchdown in this hypothetical world, they could very well pull within a field goal, and there's still a lot of time left in the fourth quarter. Who knows how strategy changes? It goes from that to now the Giants entering the red zone and really putting the icing on the cake. And then, of course, Philadelphia wound up fumbling the ball with A.J. Dillon on the ensuing possession. So when the Giants' defense needed to put that game away, they came through, they delivered. And then the other thing combined with the takeaways was the fact that Philadelphia, we talked about, number one, how great they were in the red zone, right, when we were previewing this game last week.
92%.
And then the other thing was just overall their offense for the most part, even though the passing game hadn't necessarily clicked, but the Giants held them 1 of 9 on third down. And I was also looking back at the numbers because that doesn't tell the whole story. I like to know, okay, well, what was the down and distance, Paul, that you actually had to tackle? They had a 3rd and 1 and a 3rd and 3. Outside of that, everything else was 3rd and 6 and longer. So that means that the Giants were playing really good defense on 1st and 2nd down, and that coincides with Saquon Barkley had 31 rushing yards on his first 2 carries. Remember, right out of the gates. And I know a lot of people watching the game and said, oh, here we go. It's going to be a long night. And the Giants, remember, right? Their Achilles heel had been stopping the run. So he had 10 carries for 58 yards, 12 carries, for 58 yards in the game. That means that outside of those first 2 runs, he had 10 carries for 27 yards. They held him to 2.7 yards per run after those first 2. And that's a big reason why the Eagles struggled on third down, because they weren't efficient. And now they had to make up for it with the passing attack. And it became really a one-dimensional Eagles offense that the Giants had to slow down.
Well, why don't you just flip those 2 stats? What was the Giants' third down stat?
Oh, yeah, they were, 11 of 15, I believe.
That's exactly right.
Yep.
11 of 15. Ridiculously high efficiency. And how about this? I don't keep red zone stats. I keep scoring zone stats. As I've explained on this show many times before, you get to the other team's 30, you got to get points because these kickers nowadays, you're at the 30-yard line. It's a 48-yard field goal.
That's a chip shot.
And that's like automatic now. So I believe that we should no longer keep red zone stats. We should keep scoring zone stats, which indicates what you did inside the opponent's 30. Because if you get to the 30 or in and don't get points, that's embarrassing. Okay? Giants, 4 touchdowns on 4 trips inside the scoring zone if we discount the last kneel downs, which the last kneel down is irrelevant. So out of 4 real possessions, 4 times inside the 30, 4 touchdowns. That's off the charts for this team. They came in with a 32% red zone efficiency. Never mind 30 yards and in. So you talk about those 2 stats that really showed it on the defensive side. I'll give you the 2 stats exactly the opposite on the offensive side.
And they were 3 for 3 in the true red zone. I know you said you want to extend it to the scoring zone, but they were efficient. And that, to me, did wonders for the rest of the game. And it was something that they had to solve because they were not finishing drives. They were moving the ball. And I remember in media session after media session, the offense would constantly be asked about the ability to not finish. And they would say, listen, we're moving the ball. It's not as if we're not moving the ball. You take away the 5 takeaways, the turnovers, however you want to spin it against the Saints, it tells a completely different story. That shouldn't take away from the Giants were moving the ball. The problem is they had nothing to show for it because once they got into the red zone or the scoring area, as you want to call it, they just could not protect the ball and at least have a shot for even a field goal. So the Eagles game was the first time that we saw the combination of, Paul, not only did they move the chains, but you actually had substance on the other end to complement what you had with respect to yardage.
Well, remember, we always talk about the different challenge once you get down near the goal line. Because if you don't run the ball well, and this is why I always talk about situational running games, if you don't keep defenses honest and you're not able to run the ball even when everybody in the stadium knows you want to run it, you put yourself in a very bad situation. You have to be able to impose your will with the run game in certain situations. You have to if you're going to be a winning football team. That's what this offensive line has now started to do a little bit, specifically with that firecracker named Cam Scadaboo.
Yeah. Well, and he's the guy that finished the 3 times in the red zone. Look, he had a 4-yard run, he had a 1-yard run, and they had another 1-yard run. And go ahead.
And what did we talk about when he came out of Arizona State? He is a touchdown monster. This guy had 21 rushing touchdowns at Arizona State in his last season with the Sun Devils. What I tried to tell people when I was so incredibly higher than the sky when they drafted him was understand something. At the very least, he will have an immediate impact as a short yardage back and as a goal line back. Because not only do you have to have blocking down there, but there's a certain mentality and a certain nose for the goal line. Some guys, when they get down there, Marcus Allen was another one. Now, don't get me wrong, Marcus Allen was a Hall of Fame running back. I'm not gonna say he was just an average guy. He was a Hall of Famer. But down near the goal line, Marcus Allen, forget about it. He's scoring. There are guys who have that spidey sense, if you will. There was that one year where Joe Morris ran for 21 touchdowns for the Giants back in '86. I mean, you have to not only get the blocking, but you have to have the it factor that sniffs out the end zone. Scadaboo has that, which is why I felt immediately he would have an impact on this team. We saw it last week.
And who knew that Tyrone Tracy was going to go down to further expand his role? Because now we're seeing the toughness outside of the red zone.
No doubt.
I don't think many people necessarily anticipated that. But, I mean, I was just as high on the draft pick knowing his resume and just his power and his strength. And that was on full display against Philly. One of the touchdowns, if you remember, they were pushing him back, and then he had the second effort to then fight through and get the ball across the goal line. And that's also, it's not just so much you have to be able to run the football. You have to have that toughness and that effort to finish. And I think that's what Scadaboo brings to the table. The good teams historically in NFL history who are up there at the end of the season statistically in terms of scoring offense, the one common element they have, Paul, is their ability to run the ball in those tight areas, specifically
Bingo.
inside the 10. If you can't run the ball inside the 10-yard line, number one, you're probably not a good red zone offense, and number two, your scoring rate is on the lower half of the NFL. I could go through, it's too small of a sample size right now to do it. We've got to get a little bit more games under our belt. But if you went last season and you were to go through the top offense, and let's just do that real quickly. And this has been the problem for the Giants in many seasons in recent and past history. Pittsburgh, they had Ben Roethlisberger, and towards the latter part of his career, they could not run the ball inside the 20.
Correct.
And as a result, they struggled immensely. So I'm just bringing up 2004 regular season. If we look at the top scoring offenses from that year, you're going to see that all of them had really strong running games. And surprise, surprise, number one, the Lions, with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs and a really good offensive line.
Kick your butt.
Correct. And remember, this is last year. I'm not talking about this year. Right behind them, the Buffalo Bills. Buffalo, another team. With Josh Allen, by the way, as a component of that rushing attack, and James Cook. Baltimore, Derrick Henry, and a good offensive line. Clearly, they're struggling this year. But remember, we're not talking about that. Tampa Bay actually was one of the worst rushing teams in 2023. And then Baker and Liam Cohen come together, and they're able to solve that riddle. And then the Washington Commanders, Jaden Daniels and company last year. We don't need to go beyond that. That was the top 5 scoring offense. That wasn't even rushing offense.
Right.
I'm just saying scoring offense is synonymous with red zone efficiency.
Well, the one thing that, again, I don't want to ignore here, yes, the running back has a huge impact on it. The kind of guy that he is, his ability to sniff out those points. Yes, a running quarterback absolutely helps. We understand that. That's probably the one area of the field more than anywhere else where a running quarterback really helps your offense because of the diversity that he brings. But last but not least, the Giants' offensive line. Andrew Thomas comes back, and we have seen a dramatic improvement in this offensive line once again. It's back to where it was the first month of last season when they were functional. They're not dominant. They're not great, but they're functional. For the most part, they're giving the quarterback enough time to operate, and they are certainly able to move the ball on the ground in spots where they need to do it. Now, having said that, again, they gave away 2 games with turnovers and poor defensive play between the Dallas and the New Orleans games. But I think we would all agree now, of course, Andrew Thomas didn't play against Dallas either. Let's not forget that. This Giants team is now starting to play much more like what they are capable of. This is the team that I thought we would see when I was watching training camp and when I was watching the preseason. This is much more like the team that I expected, which would, in my opinion, hover around 500 for the bulk of the season.
Well, the offensive line has not been a liability this season. I think that's pretty much what you're getting at. And as long as that doesn't happen, you could stay afloat and you could remain competitive. But I'll take it a step further. I thought this was the first time I'll go so far to say maybe forever, and that's too strong of a term, Paul, where I thought the Giants outplayed the Eagles on both sides in the trenches.
Totally.
And I can't remember, even in recent history, I know there was that big win for the Giants not too long ago at MetLife Stadium, remember, but the Eagles weren't necessarily playing everybody in that game, and I don't know even to this day how much I take away, and Philly, remember, was not playing good football. But this is early in the season where I thought the Giants out-muscled, even with the 4 straight tush pushes, I'm looking at the game overall, Philadelphia. So, that says an awful lot about when that play in the trenches can make a statement as opposed to being a bit of a rocky road, how much different the trajectory of this team can be.
Well, I would agree with you because even Andrew Thomas just told us in a conference call about 10 minutes before this program started that in this division, you have to be able to fight in the trenches because usually the teams that do better there, and it goes really in football for the most part across the board, but in this division, when you've got Philadelphia. You had, for a while, Dallas's incredible offensive line.
Yep.
Go back to the Hogs with Washington back in the day. In this division, the beef in the trenches, the physicality in the trenches has usually prevailed. And if you get pushed around up along the line of scrimmage, look, 85% of the time in any football game, you're going to be climbing uphill, but especially in this division. The reason for so many years why the NFC East was so good and used to send a representative to the Super Bowl or at least the NFC Championship game for year after year after year was because of that type of football.
Well, you talked about the Cowboys and their ability to draft. We know Philadelphia's track record. Unfortunately for the Giants, they've been on the wrong end of this conversation, Paul, year in and year out. And that has put them at a major disadvantage. Now, in no way are we saying that they fully turned the corner and all of a sudden the rankings are dramatically shifting.
But the arrow's pointing the right way.
Well, especially after a performance like Thursday. But not to get too ahead of ourselves, you're only as good as your next game. And this, I would say, this upcoming game is probably their biggest challenge in the trenches area because Denver, and we're going to get into a lot of the Broncos throughout the week, and Paul and I a little bit later in the show will give you some of our initial thoughts. But just to set the table here, Denver leads the NFL in sacks. They have 30 in the first 6 games. That means they're averaging 5 a game. 12 different players have at least half a sack, and one guy only has 8. Okay, and that's one of their top linebackers, Nick Benito. So this is going from a Philadelphia team that is strong, but remember, Jalen Carter did not play, to a Denver team that's going to have all hands on deck. Mm-hmm. And we know with the way the NFL operates, and I can't tell you how many times we go through this here, even with this show. You look at a game on paper, you go through the statistics, you think it's going to turn out one way, and then all of a sudden, those two teams have completely other plans. So don't fall for it. This is not to take anything away from the Giants. They deserve a lot of credit, but it is a week-to-week league, okay? Yeah. More so than any other professional sport. And just because you come out and win the battle one week does not guarantee anything with respect to your next opponent. And that's the caveat that we at least need to note despite the positives that came out of Thursday night.
One brief look ahead. I think what you will see is Denver's defensive front has a nice edge over the Giants' offensive front, but I think it's also true the other way. I think the Giants' defensive front has a big edge over the Broncos' offensive front, especially if you watched the game yesterday. Quite frankly, what you saw with the Broncos-Jets game yesterday, in a perfect world, that's what you'll see on Sunday with the Giants. It'll be a low-scoring tug of war, and the Giants will have an opportunity to win this game in the fourth quarter. In all honesty, that I would sign up for that tomorrow. I would like to believe the Giants will do what they need to do to pull it out, unlike what the Jets did, but that's the kind of game you're probably going to see.
Well, 13-11, and as bad as the Jets were, they had 82 total yards in that game. Yet, on the final drive, to your point, they still had an opportunity to kick a game-winning field goal.
Yeah.
But you know what happened? Denver had 2 sacks on that drive.
Right.
And that ended that. So,
well, Fields is just, oh my goodness, whatever. Hey, look, I was never a fan. You guys know that. I was never a fan.
Well, listen, the question is not to get off topic. It was always about, could Fields become a true pocket passer? That's been the MO and the big looming question mark, regardless of the environments he's been in. And when you have issues like the Jets have, the environments don't get any smoother. But their defense, in all fairness,
played very well.
Kept them in that game and deserves a lot of credit.
And I think the Giants D, if they play to their capabilities, they could do the same.
Well, Bo Nix and the Broncos have not been lighting up the scoreboard, by any means. So that's the avenue. It's the Giants defense keeping things low scoring and then hoping that their offense could stay afloat against a really good Denver defense. It's not so much Denver's takeaways. They actually have a minus turnover differential this season, but it's the fact that they're really good against the run and they're really good at getting after the quarterback. They're
really good.
Top 6 against the run and the pass. You know how sometimes you see a defense, they're really good against the run, but they give up explosive plays? No, they're extremely balanced.
The secondary's no slouch either.
They got playmakers
back there.
They're
complete. That defense is complete.
This secondary has Pat Surtain, It's got Brandon Jones. Riley Moss is no slouch. And then they brought over Talanoa Hufanga from the Niners.
And by the way, they're using him like Palomalo used to play for Pittsburgh.
Troy.
He is all over the field.
And that's what he did for the Niners, too.
They will line him up everywhere. And he will do a variety of things from everywhere. Hufanga was a maniac yesterday.
And that's exactly what I saw when he was on the West Coast with San Francisco. It's basically you're watching the same player. He just changed uniforms. All right, let's open up the phone lines as we move forward here on Monday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live. Recapping Philly, looking ahead to Denver. A little bit of both storylines as it is presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. Lance Medow, Paul Dottino with you. And we start things off with Andrew in Virginia with us here on BBKL. Welcome aboard, Andrew. What do you got for us?
Lance and Paul, I don't want to be accused of only calling up to complain. I haven't called up since week 1. I want to give the Giants a very well-earned pat on the back. Tom Coughlin used to lead off talking about the week's challenges ahead and imparting how physical the gameplay would need to be in a lot of cases. And you used that word earlier, Paul, physical. It's exactly how the Giants, whatever they did in that internal meeting, they came out and played physical. And it's not just Cam Scatterbo and Jackson Dart, though there is an attitude now on this team that we haven't had in a very long time. I'm not going to use the word identity, but maybe we'll get there. But it is a physical attitude, and the fans are absolutely loving it. We love it. I love it. It's incredible. Dart made incredible throws. The wide receivers stepped up. We're finally using the tight ends, and we're using 2 tight end packages in Bellinger's as a fullback when needed. And the running the ball the last 6 minutes of the game, they knew what we were going to do. We knew what we had to do, and we went out and executed. The O-line is playing incredible. Carmen Bursillo, we got to keep that man here. And that's, if I'm going to ask a question, that's really what it is. What are we doing about the injuries, possibly with JMS, Azudu? Are we looking like we're going to be all set on that offensive line to deal with Denver this upcoming week?
All right, Andrew, we'll let you go on that note and appreciate the phone call. I think it's a fair question about JMS, but remember, he had a cut on his nose, and then I believe it was concussion protocol. So at this point, Brian Daboll, he had his last meeting with the media on Friday and did not give any updates in terms of personnel. And the next time we'll probably hear from him, I believe, is Wednesday. So I wouldn't say that there's going to be any new developments on that front. It all depends on, with JMS, when you're in concussion protocol, there's no way to cheat that. You got to go through the process, and if you get all the check marks based on what you need to pass, he'll be eligible to take part in practice or be in consideration for the game. If he doesn't get through it, it is what it is, and he'll be on the sideline. So it's really a matter of the medical testing and so forth with respect to that. I mean, I guess the good news for the Giants with respect to John Michael Schmitz is that it was a Thursday night game, Paul, so he's a little bit ahead of the curve because he had it from Friday till now, and now he's got the full week before they play again on Sunday. So it gives him maybe a little bit more time to fully recover and get out there. But as far as Azudu, I mean, Azudu's not a starting offensive lineman, so I'm not exactly sure what he was insinuating there, other than maybe just having some depth in areas. But, I mean, if they're going to beat Denver, they're going to have to do it with their starting 5 offensive linemen and the assistance of the tight ends. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I think, Azudu is on IR until further notice. I have no indication that he's about ready to come off. And as far as the center spot, John Michael Schmitz played really well the other night until he had to come out of the game. And then, Slotman came in, and I got to give him credit. Because, I kind of doubted his ceiling. I've seen him since we was with Minnesota, and I know how the Giants used to take advantage of him out there. And then he came here as a veteran backup with experience and didn't play much. I was like, all right, well, John Michael Schmitz is going out. Ooh, let's see how this works. I was always impressed with Van Roten when he moved into the center spot when John Michael Schmitz got hurt last year.
Yep.
But, of course, that means you got to have two positions
It's too many changes, yeah.
So you'd rather not. So they went with Schlotman, and he held up. He did okay. So, I'm not ready to jump for joy and say, well, if he starts against Denver, everything's going to be rosy. I don't know that, but he certainly made me feel a lot better with what he did the other day.
Well, whoever's out there, if it's not JMS, if he doesn't get through concussion protocol, the front for Denver, Zach Allen, who was an outstanding free agent addition 2 years ago, DJ Jones and John Franklin Myers. I mean, that's their front. Not to mention who, of course, they have at the linebacker position. And Benito is one of their outside guys, but their base is at least a 3-4. So they're going to be tested outside. They're going to be tested specifically inside. So that center position, not that you could get away with a game where you don't have to worry about it, but the interior pressure for Denver is a big challenge this week. They don't just bring it off the edge. They're going to bring it from the inside.
Well, it's a multiple look defense, and they will send guys from everywhere. I mean, look, the 30 sacks, need I remind you folks, it's only the second time since 1990 that a National Football League team has had 30 sacks in its first 6 games of the season. The second time. 1990. That's a long time ago. This team is getting after it.
And Benito, who had 13 and a half sacks last season, I mean, he didn't come out of nowhere.
No.
But he already has 8 through the first 6 games. Now, he's not going
and
to,
Brian Burns has 7, by the way.
No, well, I'm not taking anything away from Brian.
I just want to make sure we get his name up there, too.
No, Burns is having an outstanding start to the season.
Because it would be unfair for us to gloat over how great the Broncos defense has been and ignore the fact that the Giants defense, when they're playing up to their best, they're right up there. All right, they're right up there. And I don't want to just talk about sack numbers. I'm talking about pressure numbers, et cetera, et cetera. Giants have a very formidable front seven.
No, they do, which is why we talked about Bo Nix in Denver has to deal with that.
Yeah.
And there's a way for the Giants defense to certainly contain that group. It's just the Broncos sack total, as you just mentioned,
it stands
is in
out.
Historical context
It stands
right
out.
now. Yeah.
But see, the Giants have to have the mentality, and this goes to the caller's point. Their mentality has to be, hey, Denver, we're coming out there. You got to deal with us. You got to deal with our defensive front. You got to deal with Dexter and with Tibbs and with Carter and with Burns. Okay, so you better get ready because we're coming. That's the attitude the Giants have to have.
Let's head back to the phone lines. We got Coach Marvin in Delaware with us. Coach Marvin, what's happening?
How you doing, Lance and Paul?
Doing right. What's on your mind?
Good. Well, I just calling everything you guys said is right on point today. You were talking about the red zone, and you have to be able to run the ball because if you can't run the ball, you're going to be facing these zones with 7 people standing in it and the goal and the out of bounds area. So it's not a lot of room to try to throw the ball down there. So you got to be physical and have to be able to run.
Yeah, you can't use the whole field once you get down in the red zone, so it changes.
Exactly. Yeah, that's why it changes so much. I'm proud of the way the guys play. You guys were talking about the offense, and I think a lot of the key it was a physical game that they played that they took to the Eagles. I'm not gonna lie, it really surprised me. I thought the Eagles would come in really more physical after what they went through the week before.
Against Denver, by the way, of all teams. Before. Yeah.
But I thought that the Giants defensively, what they did is they kept them out of those third and short. They kept them out of those areas where because normally the Eagles, they're not really trying to get first. If they can get a first down on third down, they would. But they're trying to get as close as they can to that first down. 1 yard out, a yard and a half out.
Exactly. So they can cheat. That's all they try to do.
Yeah, they try to play with 4 downs rather than 3.
Right.
And they trying to get you into that position. And I don't think they ran the tush-push in the middle of the field at all, I don't believe. I know they
No, it was just the 4 times in the red zone that they did it for the touchdown.
Right.
Yeah. Well, part of that was because, once again, I went through the third downs, the downs and distances early in the program. They faced a 3rd and 1 and a 3rd and 3. That was it. Their 7 other downs were 6 yards or more. So they didn't have the opportunity to do stuff like that in the middle of the field.
Now, when you said they had a 3rd and 1, what did they run on that 3rd and 1?
You know what? I believe they didn't convert it, because I was going back through the play-by-play. It was Jalen Hurts, I believe, attempted a run. I'd have to go back to the film off the top of my head, Marvin. I don't believe it was a tush push, but the Giants stuffed them on that play.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And defensively, I think the guys up front did a really good job with pressuring. I thought what the Giants did, if you notice, there were some times in those possessions where Jalen had a lot of time to throw the ball. I believe it had to be somewhere around 4 seconds to throw the ball.
Oh, there was a few. It was about 8 seconds, to be honest with you, Coach.
Right.
But the secondary was a lot more physical, and they got into it with guys, and they weren't giving them as much cushion.
But I think the key to that is now I think people are going to start looking, when is Jalen at his best? He's at his best when you go cover one and he has one read. When he has one read, he's outstanding. And I tell my Philly friends about this all the time. I'm not saying Jalen's a bad quarterback. I'm just in my listing, I don't have him as a top 5 quarterback because he doesn't win games. He just doesn't lose games. Those are two different people. And I think what the Giants did, they went zone quite a bit. And I don't know how many times they went zone in that game, what the percentage was, but they made him think when they went zone. He had to look for his guy. So is he perfect at going from his first read, second, and third? I don't believe he is that good in those. I think once he doesn't get his first read and possibly his second, his eyes come down. He starts looking for that rusher, and I think the Giants kind of did that to him in that game. And I think when they were rushing and he at that time, it looked like they were just keeping him in the pocket. If you notice, guys wasn't really pushing to get to him. It looks like they were just standing, keeping them in that pocket.
Well, because I think the philosophy, and we'll let you go on that note, Marvin, appreciate the phone call. The philosophy is, especially when you go up against a guy like Hurts, and you could say all you want in terms of what you think about him as a passer, he could take off and run. He's proven that. There's actually been criticism this year that they're not running him enough at times, and he'll extend plays and he'll run for first down. So I think the Giants were disciplined enough to say, we're not going to let him damage this game on the ground. Now, with all that being said, remember, there was one play in that game that Devontae Smith got behind the Giants defense, and if Jalen Hurts, Paul, throws a better football, that had home run touchdown written all over it. So there's things to clean up, of course, and there were opportunities, and some of the things that I think Philadelphia could have done didn't necessarily have a reflection on what the Giants did. It was more of what the Eagles failed to do under those circumstances.
See, you got to be careful putting stock in something like that, Lance, because every coach will tell you each and every week there are openings and there are plays that if the other team just took advantage of them, you would have been burned to the 10th degree. They're there every week. Every week, even the New England Patriots, when they had their undefeated regular season, okay, back in 2007, if Bill Belichick went back and showed you every one of their films, there would have been holes in that defense every single week, a handful of them, where if the other team had just executed, if they had the proper timing on what their pass was or their route was, or if they had just caught the drop pass, whatever the case may be, it's all about opportunity, and there is no such thing as a 100% perfectly played defensive game. It does not exist. There are always going to be plays to be made for the offense. So don't put any stock. Hurts missed that throw. Okay, there were a number of other plays too on both sides of the ball.
Sure.
Where if teams had just taken advantage of that moment, it would have changed the complexion of the game. People don't notice those because often those don't materialize because the offense did not take advantage of that play that was there. We all see the wide open receiver who doesn't get the bomb because it was overthrown by 5 yards. We all see that one. And those show up every couple of weeks where a team will get lucky because, they just totally misfired. But there are going to be numerous instances. I wish Coach Marvin was still on the phone. He could tell you. Every single game, there are opportunities for the offense to hurt you, and they just miss it or they don't execute it. So I don't want to give Philly the benefit of the doubt that, if they had just hit that pass, it would have been a whole different story.
No,
but that happens in every game.
Well, I understand it's a hypothetical, and I'm not saying that the game would have dramatically changed and the Eagles walk away with a victory.
I don't disagree with that.
That's not the point. I'm saying that Devontae Smith had several feet, between him and the nearest defender.
Oh, no, I understand that.
I mean, that was a walk-in touchdown.
I understand
if that gets executed. That's my main point. And yes, of course, it happens in every game, but there are other plays.
We just don't see them. We don't notice them.
Well,
because they're not that obvious.
Correct. That was an obvious play.
It was very obvious.
That was my point. There may be other plays in other games. The defender goes for a contested catch and makes an unbelievable catch or doesn't convert.
I guarantee you there were plays that were also on Philly's defense that were wide open during the course of the game, and some the Giants didn't hit either.
Sure, but
we just don't notice them as much.
No, and I think what you're getting at is when you watch the film, sometimes you'll see the quarterback throws to the right. On the left side, a guy would have been wide open. This was
no doubt.
This guy, Devontae Smith, he was the targeted player though on this play.
No doubt.
And that's the difference between some of the other things that I think you're insinuating. So I just wanted to make it clear that was a big play. That, listen, I'm sure Shane Bowen is showing that film and he's saying if this happens again, we're in trouble. They're definitely using that to shore things up. So it could have been an explosive play for Philadelphia, but yes, it does not mean that even if the Eagles converted that all of a sudden they're walking away with a W. That's not what I was pointing out. I was just saying that the guy who was wide open was targeted on that play, and there was no one in his vicinity based on that. Let's head back to the phone lines. Big Ed is in Maryland with us here on BBKL. What's happening, Big Ed?
Hey, guys. How you doing?
Doing all right. What's on your mind?
Man. Big Paulie, what's up, man?
How you doing?
I'm all right, brother.
I'm glad. I'm glad. Oh, I'm fine right now. I'm dry inside the building. We got about 3 days of straight rain here in North Jersey.
Yeah, that's okay, man. It can rain when you win. When you win a football game, it can rain. Go ahead.
So Mother Nature has your permission. Okay.
I'm glad.
Gotcha.
There you go.
Yes, sir, man. Look, all we got to do simply to go to Denver and just go play football. Don't make it hard. Don't make it difficult. But just go play football, man. Don't overthink the game. Play the game in and win. That's it. We took Gary Reasons and that big, dangerous 80s defense and went to Denver against the dangerous Broncos and won. You daggone right, Paulie. We can go there and do it just like that. You're exactly right. Attack, attack, attack. While we getting is good. That way.
All right, Big Ed. I mean, you are aware that was multiple decades ago. We're trying to deal with 2025 right now. So we're trying to move the calendar up just a tad.
2085 back into this thing, man, and then telling you, because we got to make this run while we can. We do it right now. If everything is right, like we just did against the Eagles, the champs, see, we got to go play them again, Paulie, but right now we got to focus on Denver. But I was going to mention this, though. We need to go out there sooner than later because of the altitude. That's 5,000 feet above sea level. We have to get used to that air. Paulie got to put that on.
Well, I don't think they're leaving earlier for this game. I mean, some teams may do that, but, we'll let you go on that note, Big Ed. Appreciate the phone call. But I don't know. I mean, listen, you know the travel schedule better than I do, Paul.
I have not received the itinerary yet
for this week.
So I don't know when we're leaving. I suspect it's going to be on Saturday.
Correct, which would be normally the day before the game. I don't see them going out there on Friday or any earlier.
Some teams have done that in the past.
Yeah, but I just don't see that happening. I'd be surprised if that shift is made. I mean, the point is well taken. I mean, even when teams are playing indoors, I know when they go in the NBA, they play the Denver Nuggets here. Sometimes the players say it's a tough adjustment, but that's why I think it's suitable to go out there the day before, get a little bit comfortable with the environment and this game, and you go from there. I don't think they're going to overdo it and rearrange the schedule because, remember, players of routine, even here in East Rutherford, in terms of preparing for whether it's a home or a road game. I don't know if Brian Dable wants to rock the boat from that standpoint.
Probably not. I don't have the answer to that, but I think we'll be going out on Saturday.
All right, let's head back to the phone lines. We'll stay in the state of Maryland. We got Len on the line. What's happening, Len? What do you got?
Hey, guys.
Hey, Len.
Good to talk to you. Thanks for taking my call. Yeah, great. Terrific win, and an important win. She's a division rival at home. We don't get many of those, and so that was really, really fun. And we clearly look like the better team. Third down numbers, wow. Run defense, just terrific. Those are the two things that stood out to me. Hey, Lance, a quick question on your comment about week-to-week league. I have no numbers to support this, and I generally agree with your feeling on this. But do you think that's more likely early in the season, Lance, than it is as we get into the middle where things start to settle down and the better teams start to rise to the top? What's your feeling on that?
No, I think it's just the nature of the league. I mean, off the top of my head, and I'm going a little bit maybe a few years ago, I remember the year that the Packers were running the table and Green Bay came here and won a close game on a last-second field goal. Then you had Romeo Crennel's Chiefs that went and beat them, what was it, a week or two later, and Kansas City was one of the worst teams in the league, and you had Aaron Rodgers and that Green Bay offense, and that was, we're talking about one of maybe the final 4 weeks of the season. I'll give you another example. The Giants knocked off, it's funny, we're going back in the day, John Elway's Denver Broncos, right? And that was a late in the season. So I don't really think, to respond to that statement, Len, I would not say it has anything to do with early in the season. I just think that, with the way injuries play out, teams lose personnel, strategy, digging deep into your bag of tricks. I just think it's the nature of this league more so than anything else.
Yeah, okay. Schlotman, there was a reason why we signed him for 2 years. I mean, we gave the guy a 2-year contract as a backup, and he can play a little bit. I think we have improved the depth along the offensive line, but that was quite a good move, I thought, on my part. On John Michael Schmitz, he has played better of late, Paulie. It's just a question. Great drive by Basillo. I'm not trying to take anything away from Basillo on this, but they signed an assistant offensive line coach last year. A young guy, 30 years old. I mean, that's young for a coach.
But he was a horse. He was a center at Iowa.
Ferenc, who was a center at New England for quite a while.
The son of Kirk.
Yeah,
that's Kirk's son.
Belichick kept him around, and of course he comes out of that offensive line factory at the University of Iowa, where his father was well known for having developed offensive lines over the years. I'm wondering if he hasn't had some effect.
Of course,
on John Michael.
Coach Dable always says that that offensive line room is the product of both of those guys. Everybody, and it's probably my fault more than anybody. I'm always talking about Carmen Brasillo. I probably mentioned his name on this program more than anybody else has, but Coach Ferenc is absolutely a part of that room, and I can tell you this. There were a lot of people in this building who thought that we might lose him during the offseason. But fortunately for the Giants, he was able to stay, and they've got that tag team in there between Brasillo and Ferenc, who I think have really done a good job of getting this line, again, up to that functional level.
Yeah. And remember, they have connections to Dante Scarnecchia from New England.
In your ear, Ferenc to John Michael, I think it's probably helps them a little bit. I thought that was a good move to start with because he hung around the NFL. He certainly had the skills to hang around 7-8 years. Paul, how much? Let me get to the run defense for just a second here. I thought it was terrific. Sorry about Davidson. Hopefully, it's not long term. That's such an important position. You need to have a guy who you can put out on the field 12 to 14 plays a game, just to spell that Big Dexter, and not have to pay the price for it. And I thought Davidson, in his third year, am I right on that, Paul? Third year, he seemed to be coming along a little bit. And giving us those 12 plays that we needed to get Dexter a little bit of rest. But let me speak more to the defensive line and get your opinion on this.
Well, I should just say this to you, Lan. B.J. Davidson significantly bulked up during the offseason.
Yeah.
From when he came into the league, they thought his future was as a 3-technique penetrating defensive tackle who would help them more in the pass rush.
Yeah.
They actually thought that was going to be his role. And this past offseason, seeing that he was injured a lot and never really got to the point where he was going to be effective, he bulked up and got really thick and is now a little bit more of a plugger than maybe a 3-technique, and I think it's helped him.
Good. I hope we get him back because I think he's been doing a good job in spelling Dexter. He's probably not a starter, but I hope you understand what I'm saying about the importance of a guy like that.
Well, you need those rotational guys.
And Sean Robinson was really good for them a couple of years ago, and then he signed as a free agent and left for Carolina.
What do you think we do there, Paul? And Lance, you think we go to Nachos if as the backup nose, or bring up Riley? I know Riley's on the practice squad.
Yeah, Riley.
And Len, we'll let you go on that note. Appreciate the phone call.
Riley has the best frame in terms of the prototype nose tackle. He's the guy who's got the best frame to do it. But unfortunately, he's still on the practice squad because he's never made that jump to where he can consistently handle the job. And quite honestly, the Giants have been playing a lot of shuffleboard right now with their practice squad guys. Yeah. So I'm not sure how they feel about necessarily elevating him. But I understand your question. Robertson Harris is a very large frame human being.
I was going to bring up his name.
And I suspect he might wind up taking some of those snaps that Davidson would have had otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, he could play inside, outside. So, I mean, I think that to me is the most logical choice. I would have thrown out maybe experimenting a little bit with Darius Alexander, but I think at this point, given his youth, I don't know if they'd want to throw him into the fire that quickly. So,
he's played better lately, though, too.
Yes.
Again, another guy who's ascending, but he's young.
And they're moving him along slowly.
Yes.
Which is what we heard philosophically speaking. So, I think Robertson Harris, if you want to spell Dex for a few plays, probably would be the first guy up. And then, they could elevate somebody, as you mentioned, from the practice squad, who they feel that can, come in for a few snaps. Because the importance, going back to what we were just talking about with DJ Davidson, it's not so much that you just want a body. You want to make sure that when you bring in another player, that there's not a significant drop-off, Paul, where all of a sudden the offense is saying to himself, just like when a corner comes in, right, for one of the outside guys or the slot, okay, we're going to be targeting that guy because he's fresh off the bench. We want to see what he could do. You don't want to give the opposing offense that feel. You're putting a target essentially on that guy's back. So it's not just find a warm body that can eat up space. It's find somebody that there's not going to be a dramatic difference between Dex and that player. And I know you're not getting another all-pro to come in, but you can close the gap between Dex and that other player.
I ask for one thing from the guy who spells Dexter Lawrence, because Dexter gets double teams like 85 to 90% of the time. So you're not going to get that. The guy who comes in will not get double teamed. I just ask that guy, can you hold the point of attack so that you don't get gouged by a 5-yard running play? That's all. Hold the point of attack, clog it up, let the other guys come in and make the tackles. I don't care if you even get an assist. Just try to hold the point of attack. Make it difficult so that they don't have a hole that they can just rip through up the middle and gain 7 yards on 1st and 10. That's all I want from that guy. If you could give me, just be a body, be a traffic cone, take up space. Just do that. And if you can prevent that from happening, you've done your job. Because let's face it, again, we know Dexter's going to play most of the game anyway.
But you just don't want to wear him down to the point where he's playing 95% of the snaps. I mean, even under the circumstances, also when he was dealing with the illness, it was hard enough for him to get through that game, given he barely practiced throughout the week. So that's more of a reason why you have to be prepared for all of these different scenarios. Another thing that I just wanted to correct, DJ Davidson's in his 4th and final year of the rookie contract.
He missed one full year with injury, right?
He was 2022. He was a 5th-round pick. So 22, 23, 24, 25. This is year 4 now. So this is the final year of that rookie deal. Because he's dealt with injuries, sometimes you just feel as if it's one less year. But remember, from a rookie contractual standpoint, they don't care whether you were healthy or hurt.
They do not.
You don't get an addition to that deal. You take that, and that's the end of it.
Well, just like for the pension, you get credit for your IR season. It works both ways.
It does. No, that's fair. A little bit of a give and a little bit of a take. Rich is in Florida, joining us here on BBKL. What's happening, Rich?
Good afternoon, Godfather Dottino and Lance. You know, the juice that Dexter, Jackson Dart and Scotabo have brought to this team is absolutely delightful, refreshing, really fun to watch. Paul, you were in the stadium. I know you felt it. We could feel it on the TV, and you could see it. You know, it's infectious to the team and the fans. Long overdue. In fact, Paul might remember, I think he was born then, last time I saw two Giants, make a emotional impact on the team like that was back in 1965 when they had the two, what they called the baby bulls, Tucker Frederickson and Ernie Coy. Paul, do you remember that?
Ernie Coy actually even did some punting duties for a season, too.
You're right. You're right. You remember that?
Yeah, well, the Baby Bulls, that also included, don't forget Chuck Mercine. He was involved in the Baby Bulls.
Yeah.
You know, I trust me. Steve Thurlow was another one.
Yeah,
I know who the Baby Bulls were, believe me.
Earl Morrow was the quarterback, but fantastic to see. And Lance, I, along with Paul, have watched the replay at least 10 times.
Congratulations for giving him a run for his money. So, yeah.
All right, keep up the great work. Go Giants.
All right, sounds good. Appreciate the phone call, Rich.
Bobby Duhan was another one of the Baby Bulls.
I know this class doesn't compare, and because it was more of a group, but I would say the 2007 draft class, I thought, provided a bit of enthusiasm, given across the board how they contributed. You're not going to get two guys in particular that are doing all the heavy lifting, like perhaps Scadaboo and Dart, but if you want to go a little bit more recent history, I know he was trying to appease to you in terms of the good old days in the 60s, but I'm going to move it up a little bit. I think 07 overall,
yes.
I thought that group really came in and held their own, and clearly it was a special season, but even before they went on that Super Bowl run, you could see that there were flashes from a number of guys.
And guys who made key plays in the postseason.
Yeah, but, even I'm going back regular season, Bradshaw, the big run in Buffalo.
No doubt.
And, we could go down the list here, or, even Diassi, and, the little things that don't always show up on film, all of those are important elements. So I do think you could look at maybe some recent examples, but I guess what makes this year unique is everybody will say, well, it's the quarterback. And yes, you're going to be hard-pressed to find another rookie quarterback to come in.
I had a guy hit me up on Twitter, and he goes, well, I think this is kind of like 81, where the Giants weren't expected to do much, and now they're going to be very competitive, and they got the injection, and he was more or less talking about LT with Abdul Carter. He was talking about the acquisition of Rob Carpenter, who was basically an overachiever, a blue-collar, undersized fullback, a tweener, if you will, who really injected life into the Giants' running game and gave them that tough, blue-collar, suburban mentality that helped get them to the playoffs. So he was trying to compare Scadaboo to Carpenter, and then he was comparing Dart to Phil Simms, because Phil was very emotional, very energized, and Phil ran around a lot for his life during his early days with the Giants, and he kept getting hurt all the time. And, I would only say this. I do see some of the similarities in terms of the enthusiasm and the juice and the energy between Simms and Dart, and the fact that both guys can move around. Phil was much more, again, a runner for his life. It wasn't out of design as a younger player than when he became a strictly pocket passer later in his career. So I did see some of that. I will give him some of Carpenter, although there's no doubt in my mind Scadaboo has more athleticism than Carpenter had. And that's where it stops, because nobody lives on the same planet as LT. So I'm not letting him put the whole Carter LT thing together. That's a no-go for me.
Well, that's why comparisons sometimes get a little out of hand when people fail to really put history in perspective. And I get the enthusiasm and the excitement, but sometimes we could just leave it on an island by itself, and it doesn't have to match with other groups of players.
Abdul Carter's more of an Andy Hedden type. You remember Andy Hedden at all?
No, I do remember that name.
Okay.
I can't say that.
He's more of an Andy
Yeah.
Hedden type than he is a LT. Okay, because again, LT's a one of a kind. I can't go there.
All right, let's head back to the phone lines as we move forward here on Monday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live. We got Victor in Pennsylvania with us. What's happening, Victor?
Hey, guys. This is my first time calling, long time listener.
Well, welcome aboard.
Just to kind of just to kind of talk about what the last guy was saying. I live in Scranton, Pennsylvania, so I'm surrounded by Eagles fans all the time.
Sure.
I think big picture, like what the takeaways of this game and going forward to the season is, we have, some energy. We have pieces to build on with Dart and Scatterbo. And that was a statement win. That was the new regime coming in, the new rookies coming in, and kind of making it known that, I think Dart spoke about it after the game a little bit, saying that there's a lot of negativity, and they came into this. They don't want to kind of subscribe to that negativity. They just want to kind of play and win and establish their own identities here. So I think that's the big picture. And then going forward, we got some really good pieces. Defense is looking good. We just got to keep putting next foot forward and just be excited that Giants football is looking like Giants football again.
All right, Victor. Well, appreciate the phone call. I'm glad he brought up Jackson Dart's post-game presser because I don't know how much that has been previously discussed on this show, but it was interesting when he was asked about the past and something came up about whether or not players read what is on social media and does it resonate. And he was saying, listen, we're not naive. We see commentary. We see some of the negativity. And all he was basically relaying was the fact that we, and what he meant by we is the younger guys, the guys that were drafted this year specifically, they don't know anything about Giants history because they weren't around. They weren't in the locker room. They had not put on the uniform. So he just said we should not be synonymous with past history for the team. We're coming in and we're just staying focused on the task at hand, and whatever happened in 23 or 21 or anything before that really has no relation. And I would agree with him. And I think if you ask most young players that, they pretty much have the same philosophy. They're just thrown in under the same umbrella of the emblem because they're now associated with the team, but they have no connection or anything tied into what happened prior to their arrival. So for them to just simply subscribe to, oh, here we go again, or, we know this is going to be the result based on what happened early last season, is not, to me, a strong enough mentality to have for a young player. So the fact that they're not even taking on that baggage, I think is the right way to approach this and go about your business.
In short, much of the misery of the last decade or so is not part of their own resumes. So why should they be accountable to it?
And also, I'm just big on, and this goes back to a conversation we were having, I believe it was Len earlier in the program, when he asked the question about why is it a week-to-week league, and how, to me, it has nothing to do with the early stages. I think you can have examples later on in the season. I think the separation between a lot of teams is not as big as people make it out to be. But it goes back to, Paul, also, there are some subscribe to the fact that what happened the previous season just gets carried over. I don't buy into that. I think every year it's a new team. Whether you have faith in the team or not is a whole other story. But this idea that, well, the team struggled last year and there's a lot of returning players, so they're going to get in their own way again, I don't buy into that. And I think there's enough examples in recent and past NFL history that prove that we've seen teams statistically struggle, and a new staff comes in, new philosophy, and they're able to turn the corner. It happens quickly in this league.
Your number, which you used to quote all the time, and I don't know if you've quoted it yet this year, and I'm not sure what exactly the number was, but for the better part of the last decade, every year there's a turnover of 4 or 5 teams in the playoffs. So what is so automatic about the previous postseason team getting in this year? It's not. Heck, we all could cite Washington 2 years ago. They were dreg.
Yep.
And then they went far into the playoffs this past season. It's just the way it works in this league now. Because it's set up for, parity, mediocrity, what I always call, well, never mind.
Yes.
We won't, because otherwise I have to copyright myself. I'll have to charge myself. The quicksand of mediocrity. I haven't said that in a long time.
Yes.
I got to pay myself for using it again.
Well, I like the quicksand term. I won't adopt mediocrity because I think that's more of a negative connotation. I don't think it's a mediocre league. I just think a lot of teams are grouped together. That, to me, is the better way to say it. But just to put a bow on this conversation before we wrap up, I bring these numbers up because I chart it year by year. I go back to 2002. I started this when the Patriots were beginning their dynasty. That's what. So you could see, I don't know if you could see the numbers here, but from 2002 to 2004, we have had new playoff teams. It's never gone lower than 4. So, and remember, we've expanded the postseason, by the way, too. So you have to take that into consideration. Last year, the number was 5, which was on the low side because prior to 24, from 18 all the way through 23, we had at least 6 to 7 in that ballpark. So it just goes to show you. I mean, that's, once again, that's almost a 50% turnover rate when it comes to the postseason.
Every year when Vegas puts out the preseason odds, they always go to last year's playoff teams, and they're the top.
Which is ridiculous.
They're the top 10 favorites every single year.
More of a reason why I also don't allow Vegas to influence how I feel about the National Football League.
Exactly.
And we could spend an entire show going the ins and outs of Vegas, which we're not going to do. But I wish people would shy away from having that influence, whether or not a football game is going to be won or lost because of the way the book plays out. Anyway, that is going to wrap up Monday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live. Good discussion on many fronts, Paul, as always.
Yes, sir.
So appreciate the dialogue and appreciate our callers and our viewers as always. It is presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants, as we are here in the podcast studio presented by Hackensack Meridian Health. Keep getting better. The archive of this show, our entire podcast network, is on the Giants mobile app, podcast platforms everywhere, and at giants.com/podcasts. For Paul Dottino, I'm Lance Medow. Signing off here on Big Blue Kickoff Live. We'll be up and running again on Tuesday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern. Stay locked to giants.com for all the latest. Have a good one.